Is it possible to spend nearly 4 weeks traveling with a family of 5 to 9 cities in 3 different countries, build lifelong memories, and not break the bank doing it? I'm going to give you a hint. It is. And today, I'm going to show you how our family just got back from going to Tokyo, London, and 7 cities in China. We had an absolute blast, and we stayed financially smart. Now today, I am going to talk about what we did and the places that we went, but most of that detail I'm going to save for next week, and I'll really dive into more of the experience and more of the why we went on this trip, which was creating that experience. Today is going to be more about the logistics of things and how we really paid for the whole trip and made it financially doable. Let's go. We flew from here in the US direct to Tokyo and spent about 4 days there. From there, we went to China for 2.5 weeks. China is where my wife is originally from, so a much longer period of time that we spent there. And then we went to London after China for another 4 days. Now, like I said, my wife's from China, so we have a built-in reason to go there. And we have to go back from time to time. It's been 6.5 years since we were last back to visit. That's pre-COVID. And it's just been too long. And really, our kids won't be kids forever. There's only so much time that we have to spend with them while they're kids and to give them unique experiences, which is what we really think this trip was largely about. And also, our kids are all old enough now that they will have strong memories from this trip. It's not like the last time we went to China when our youngest was just 6 months old. Now, she actually turned 7 on this trip. So a much better memory building experience, which is what we wanted to do. A big question that we had for ourselves, and maybe you had, is how did we pay for it all? It's 5 people taking 4 international flights. It's not cheap, of course, but we did it with a few specific strategies, okay? A couple of side hustles were a big part of how we paid for a significant portion of the trip. We set savings goals for how we would pay for the flights and the hotels. These are the 2 biggest categories of expenses. But then, of course, also the food. You're eating out for a lot of the meals, if not almost all of the meals. So there's just additional expenses that you have. And of course, there's expenses that you don't have from not being home. There's certain things that you just won't have to pay for because you're not here. So we did use a lot of credit card travel points for this. We opened 2 new travel credit cards to use only for expenses that we already had. You might hear advice saying, oh my gosh, this is a scam. I think that's ridiculous. If you're going to already spend the money and you can be disciplined about only using it for that and pay the cards off, which they are. Those cards are already completely paid off. Then I think you are getting a benefit by using the points. So we saved a couple of $1,000s just by being able to use credit card points for flights and hotels. And we also earned points during the trip from our different expenses. So the categories of expenses that we had to deal with were, of course, flights, hotels, trains, primarily in China. This is how we got from city to city in China. We went to 7 different cities. Taxis, we also did a lot of taxis. All of the taxis that we did were in China. And then public transit, of course, we did exclusively public transit in Tokyo, exclusively public transit in London, and a little bit in China. And then food, and of course, souvenirs and miscellaneous expenses. How did we save money on this trip? How did we sort of spend the least amount of money that we could? Well, China was our biggest advantage here, as for a portion of the trip, we knew we'd be visiting various, family and friends who, insisted on treating us to meals. So there's a lot of food expenses and even housing expenses for a portion of it, lodging, there was no expense for because we were either staying with family or things were getting paid for us. And also in China, we had a massive advantage because the entire time in China, my wife's sister was with us, and most of the time, their father was also with us. So we all traveled together, 7 of us together, which is why we ended up using taxis a lot, because it was easier to get around that way for a lot of stuff. But that was a huge advantage that we had. Her sister also handled all the logistics for us. She booked every single hotel, every single train. She ordered all the food anytime we ordered something out or, went to a restaurant. She just handled it all. Even though we would try to insist on doing some of it, she wouldn't let us. And so that really took a lot of stress of the trip out of the way. And so that's, if you have friends or family somewhere, that is obviously an easy way to save money and make the trip a little less stressful. We saved money on this trip by planning early. We started planning for this trip about 6 months in advance, which gave us time to be patient in booking all of our tickets and making our hotel reservations and stuff. So it gave us time to look for the best prices, to not have to just buy right now, but wait until prices were the lowest we had seen them and then get them then. For some of the special things that we did, like in Tokyo, we did go to Tokyo Disney Sea. I just marked the calendar as to when those tickets go on sale, because I think it's like 3 months in advance they go on sale. And so on that day, I just logged in and bought the tickets then. So some of that stuff I didn't really have to worry about because it was just very formulaic. And I like to plan the logistics for these kinds of things. We also had flexible dates for when we wanted to travel. We weren't locked into specific times that we needed to go on the trip. Now, obviously, once we booked some of the travel plans, then we became a little more locked in, but this allowed us to travel on like Tuesdays and Wednesdays, which typically flights are cheaper on those days, and we didn't have to only fly on weekends. We also bought the most basic economy tickets for all of our flights. This did mean that we had to pay for a checked bag one time on one flight, but we only brought one checked bag with us on the whole trip. Everything else was carry-on or personal item that we brought onto the plane. And this kept our expenses down. We didn't have to pay for checked bags. We also didn't have to lug big bags around with us. And we did the math on what was the best way to save money. So for example, when I was looking at the hotel in London, I always like to get a hotel that includes breakfast because I like to know that we could just get breakfast easily if we need to. But I looked at the math on this, and the hotel that we booked in London, the price with breakfast included was the same as the price without breakfast included, plus paying for a la carte breakfast. So I said, well, why am I going to pay for breakfast every day if I'm not necessarily going to use it? Why not just book the hotel price that doesn't include breakfast, and then if we want it, it's the same price and we can get it. And we actually ended up not getting the hotel breakfast any day. We just did other things for breakfast every day in London. So that worked out really well to save us money. We did plan 1 to 2 main things in each city that we went to that required purchasing tickets in advance. And so this gave us something special to look forward to, but also let us budget for each city by knowing how much things would cost and what we could really afford to do. And there were definitely some things that I looked at the price on and said, you know what, unfortunately, no, this is going to be too expensive. We can't do it. And honestly, I don't even remember what those things were at this point because it didn't matter. We had the things that we did do were so great that it worked out perfectly. So in Tokyo, the day after we landed in Tokyo, we did Tokyo Disney Sea. Here we are. Tokyo Disney Sea. Woohoo! We also went to Team Labs Borderless, and it was incredible. In China, like I said, we went to 7 different cities. After landing in Beijing and then going to my wife's hometown, we then went to Chengdu, which is the home of the pandas. One of the things that I always wanted to do was go to one of their national parks, which is called Zhoujiaigou. It's like scenes from a movie. Nearby to that is another place called Huanglong. It's like a national preserve, and it was actually the highest elevation that we got to. From Chengdu, we worked our way back up in China to Xi'an, and this is the home of the famous terracotta warriors. And then from Xi'an, we eventually worked our way over to Qinhuangdao. This is where my wife and I met, the origin of the Great Wall. After China, we flew to London, and the big thing that we did in London was the Warner Brothers Harry Potter studio tour. Now, those are the things that we paid for, but really on this trip, we prioritized free or inexpensive experiences. In London, we used the underground, the above ground, and buses also. All the transit in Tokyo and London was super easy. Everything we did was just tap to pay. Now, food, we obviously ate out a lot, but our plan was to be as disciplined as possible. So we did not eat at lavish or fancy places. We tried to eat out at most 2 times a day. And the rest of the time we would, purchase things from like a grocery store or a convenience store that were more affordable. I mean, once or twice we got instant noodles, and it was fine. Now, the cost of food didn't matter so much in China, as everything is so much more affordable there than the US, and especially London. I mean, London was like eye-opening, shocking as to how expensive food was, and even a simple meal could be. And then, of course, our miscellaneous purchases like souvenirs or gifts, we limited those. We just got a few gifts for family and friends, but nothing major. So yes, it is possible to make this happen. Was it dirt cheap? No, it wasn't. But was it worth it? And was it affordable for us? 1,000,000 times yes. What are your travel tips for making things affordable but enjoyable? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.